Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in this video I like to discuss how during the local elections in just under 2 weeks, the mayoral race in my area could prove pivotal for the future direction the Conservatives and Labour may take, but it could also present a worrying fork in the road for Reform UK themselves if they don't meet their expectations. But first, for daily news and commentary, please hit the subscribe button to stay notified. So Lincolnshire, the birthplace of Newton and Tennyson, is being asked to flush its reputation down the toilet and vote for Jenkyns to be the mayor of Greater Lincolnshire. Now, I'm not going to discuss how she doesn't have a plan to take advantage of the powers her office would give her, to sort transport out, for example, or the fact that she will just spend the next few years banging on about the things that are the council or the government's area, not her own, right? Unless you live in the Lincolnshire area, you don't really care about that. What I'm going to talk about is the potential wider impact because, and you may have noticed, politicians tend to have a habit of panicking and doing something incredibly stupid when things don't go their way unexpectedly. For example, in 2023, Labour were fighting the Uxbridge and South Ruislip by-election after Boris Johnson ran away from Parliament. Now, Labour had never won this seat, so no big deal if they didn't win it this time. But they were in a good position. However, despite having run a campaign which failed to address the Tories' number one issue, and it was very easy to address it, Labour lost, only by a few hundred votes, no big deal. However, the result caused both Labour and the Conservatives to suddenly change their entire national strategy in a very self-defeating way. The Conservatives thought that they could win elections by calling for more air pollution, because it works there. So they did, wasting months on a message that actually didn't turn out to resonate anywhere else. And Labour panicked and flipped on some social issues, most notably at the time trans rights, culminating in the mess we've got this week. But what they did doesn't really matter as much as the fact that based on one little election in one part of the country, both parties reactively changed some aspect of their entire national strategy. Well, Labour have got the same leader, so there's a good chance that Labour are still prone to this sort of panic. They will mistake Reform's success with their awful social attitudes when it's actually their superior communications that will win it for them. And the Conservatives have an even more reactionary leader, so the same applies. And if there's an election coming up which may have the same panic-inducing power of that Uxbridge by-election in 2023, I think it will be the mayoral contest for Greater Lincolnshire. And although both the Conservatives and Labour may do something stupid if these elections go badly for them, and I might well do, I think the Conservatives in particular face a moment of extreme danger in Lincolnshire. So far, I've been mostly preoccupied by the fact that I do not want an incompetent hate merchant who's going to go around the county screaming at cats for the next few years. From any party. I don't want them running my regional bureaucracy. That she is representing Reform UK just makes the prospect way worse. But if Jenkyns wins, it will be deeply irritating for me. But it could be catastrophic for the Conservatives. Greater Lincolnshire is basically gammon central. There's a sense in which the Conservatives should not be overly concerned if Jenkyns wins. In fact, I'll give them a couple of reasons why they shouldn't think it's that big a deal. First, Lincolnshire in general has lots of different areas. It's got industrial towns, it's got isolated rural communities, it covers quite an area and goes quite far north, relatively speaking, and quite far south. And it's got all of these lots of different communities. But one thing that unites them, socially conservative values. There is a reason these areas voted so strongly for Brexit, and some areas still think Brexit's a great idea. Unlike some other parts of the countries where it was a much simpler case of, okay, so there's been some economic decline in their town caused by Tory austerity, so they didn't like the Tories, but also they think that Labour were to blame for the global banking crisis. So they voted for Brexit as we've got to have this government or that government, and neither government seemed to work. So let's do this third mad thing, right? Some sort of punt at shaking things up. Now, in other parts of the country, that can be easily explained. But in Lincolnshire, they'd have voted for it anyway, even if times were good. The politics is a little bit different here. There's no reason for Conservatives to suppose that what happens in Lincolnshire would be replicated elsewhere in a general election. That being said, they did for Uxbridge, which was very far from the views of the rest of the country, and that didn't work out for them. Second, Jenkyns is not someone from like this type of politics who's risen to prominence under the banner of Reform UK. She was a Tory who earned herself a name as a Boris Johnson loyalist. So voting for her could just be a vote for what actual Conservatives thought were better days, or her name. The Labour candidate is well known in and around Grimsby, but Greater Lincolnshire covers a massive area. Jenkyns is the one that will be the most well known around the whole county. At least as much, technically it's split into 3 counties these days, as much as any of the candidates are. People do sometimes just tick a box because there's a familiar name there. So really, I would say that this mayoral race is a bit of an aberration. The Tories probably shouldn't read too much into it. If they lose, they may not lose. That being said, they will though, won't they? And what some analysts, such as Ben Walker, have been explaining is that, so what may happen is some Conservatives could see Jenkyns, who, after all, is a Tory reject, rise into even higher office with Reform UK, because being a Metro Mayor is a bigger gig than being an MP. And others might decide that defection is the way to improve their chances of staying on the political gravy train. That would be the fear for the Tories, especially if Reform make big gains in council seats as well. And what they may well do is try to ape Reform UK even more, despite the fact that Kemi Badenoch's efforts to do that have resulted in even more Conservative votes leaving for Reform UK. Because why wouldn't they? If you're going to present 2 parties that are going to look the same, why don't you go for the real deal? In fact, imagine if Reform UK win the Runcorn by-election, overturning a large Labour majority, the Lincolnshire mayoral race, as well as cleaning up in the local council elections. Now, as a Labour supporter, I worry that many in Labour will panic at this. They shouldn't either. They should know that actually they're already making things better and it will become more obvious over the next few years, well in time for the election. They don't need to panic and push their own culture wars. I have a sinking feeling that they will. Like I say, one of the most important lessons I've learned about politics in my decades-long interest is that MPs, far from being alpha political beasts, are often just as clueless as anyone, as likely to wipe their arse with a book on political strategy as read it. And that's across all parties. But the Tories will have more reason to panic. They still shouldn't, but it's more understandable. They can no longer prove themselves. They cannot just think, in a couple of years, our policies will come to fruition and people will see it. They're not in power anywhere, apart from they've got a mayoral position in the northeast of England. So it's quite difficult to do anything other than outbid Reform on policies, which sound like they might work, without being able to prove it. That being said, the reverse would also be true, wouldn't it? If Jenkyns doesn't win, then Reform will look weak. Like I say, this is basically the most Brexit part of the country. And if Reform UK cannot win the big job here, what does it say for their momentum? Even if they do well in council seats, they can be won by like a handful of votes. Turnout is often really low, and I reckon it could be appalling this year. You could literally, on your way to the polling station, go into a pub and say, "Shall we all go and vote? And I'll buy you a drink afterwards." And that could swing the result. It's literally that tight. It's like Reform UK needs to win this mayoral race more than anything to show progress. Failure to do so will come as a huge relief to the Tories. They may not even mind if Labour win instead. I have no idea who, by the way, is in pole position. I've not seen any polling, which is a problem. Because even if people wanted to tactically vote against Reform UK as the worst option, it's not really clear. And past voting behaviour wouldn't necessarily tell you, because there's never been a mayoral race here. This is like an inaugural mayoral position. So it's not clear what the tactical vote is. So people will defer to their natural voting inclinations. And there's a full slate of candidates. You've got Independents, Greens, Lib Dems, as well as Labour, Conservatives and Reform UK. So the vote is likely to be split all over the place and could well allow Jenkyns to take the win. I can absolutely see that happening. But if she doesn't, then questions will be asked of Reform UK and Farage, especially with the potential for more infighting this year, which I'll discuss in a separate video. Because right now, Reform UK are in their absolute best position. The Tories have obviously failed. Everything is broken. Labour are showing delivery on access to the NHS and pay, sure. Not that you'd know it from the news unless you're experiencing it yourself, because they're very bad at the media game. But as I keep saying, if we can stop Trump flushing the global economy down the toilet, people should be noticing improvements in the next year or two. And speaking of Trump, it's not obvious to everyone yet that the damage Farage's hero is causing is relevant to us here. In the next couple of years, Reform UK could well be facing a perfect storm, a much tougher battle than they are now, where everything is going their way. This is potentially their sweet spot. And if they can't capitalise it on May the 1st, It may not be Labour and the Conservatives panicking, it might be Reform UK. You know, these are the stakes for what a lot of people think are largely unimportant elections. There's no such thing as an unimportant election at any time. But if you are heading to the polls, please remember you need photo ID. Link in the description below if you're not sure if yours will be valid. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.